it's a good question, because I think every character has their own set of challenges. Sometimes the one that seem that'll be the easiest to play are a little harder. Whenever I'm playing a character that feels like, oh, that's just me, that's how I identify, and I think, oh, it's going to be a cakewalk, and then you go in the booth and go, oh wow, no, this is really hard, because now I'm in my own head about, like, well, how would I say this? You know, it feels weird, but I think, and we're going to get really emotional territory, but Okabe from Steins Gate was probably the most challenging, because Steins Gate is a beautiful, beautiful show. I had the great honor of getting to work on it as an adaptive writer along with Patrick Seitz, who's one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And we had a ball writing it, and watching the original Japanese was fantastic, but then time came to audition for it, and I got the role of Okabe, which I did not write for myself. In fact, whenever I was writing stuff, I'd be like, oh, I do not envy the poor bastard that has to breathe life into this. Oh, it's me! Oh, great! So it was challenging and very emotional, because it's such an emotional arc. If you're familiar with the show, it's very real. And it was really hard to write the show and then go in the booth and record the next day and then come home and be working on the next episode. Like, there was just no getting away from that show for the good 6 months that we worked on it. And I had a bit of a breakdown that actually made it in the booth. We had a day where we were recording, and the character Okabe has a really serious breakdown, and it just got too real for me, and I was like, bah! You know, ugly cry. And I kind of took a break for a few moments and then came back, and Colleen, the show's director, was like, you know, hey, so the good news is all of that fit if you just want to not do it again, but everyone will know what you sound like having a mental breakdown in the booth. I'm like, that's cool, let's just go with that. I don't want to do it again. So if you ever want to, it's the greatest plug for any show ever, if you want to hear me have a mental breakdown, episode 13 of Steins Gate. So yeah, Okabe, definitely Okabe, most challenging. You know, all of them are oddly natural to me. Like, I don't know, so there's this, I discovered this about acting, and I don't want to like sit here and be like, acting is, I have no idea. But when I was younger, I used to think of character as like them, me. They were like a separate entity, and you kind of study them, and what are they thinking, what are they getting, and I've since come to learn or feel that there's no such thing as a character. Like, it's not some magical outfit I put on and I become that thing. They're just me. They're just some facet of my own personality that maybe I don't identify with until I'm in just the right set of circumstances. So if I just leave myself open to the material and what's there, it all comes surprisingly natural. Like, it all belongs to some process in my head that I can't explain. It's just there. I think most actors feel that way. It's just kind of like, oh, you do what's there, and if you're just receptive to the context it's in, you suddenly find that it is you. It's just not something you thought of yourself as being, but there you are, and it's real for you in that moment, and it becomes real for the audience. So it's a weird thing to think about, but they've all been natural. Even the crazy over-the-top ones, like, just seem perfectly normal people to me. Villains are fun. Villains are fun. I mean, right? Because they're the, you know, you can say, oh yeah, villains are fun. Because, I mean, I think you gotta love the villain that's so self-actualized. They know what they want, and they don't give a damn, you know, and they're all, you know, we've all had someone cut in line in front of us, like at Starbucks, and we're like, oh, if I was a villain, I'd be like, you, brr, and then destroy them and then get your coffee. Yeah. And you would never do that in real life, so it's very liberating to play a villain who's just like, no, I'm entitled to this. It's also fascinating for me to think about, like, villains don't think of themselves as villains. The greatest villains, they're the hero of their own story. You know, it's all about their angle. And it's just nice to, I'm in real life a very kind of shy person. I don't assert myself very readily. So I've always attracted to those villains who are super, like, they know themselves and they know what they want, and they wear it boldly. There's an appeal to that sort of character because you're like, man, you're a complete bastard, but I like your style. So villains are fun. Similarly, any character that's like the dark horse of the cast, like the one you're like, I don't know what your thing is. You're the mystery. I love playing those characters because they're just more, they're challenging for one, because you have to kind of do more with less. The characters that don't say as much, or that say, you know, just the well-timed thing, they're so it's just they speak more through silence than they do anything else. Those are the really challenging characters to play, and I love a good challenge. It depends on the show. Everyone is a little different. It also depends on, if we're working on, for example, broadcast dubs, which has been the trend lately. I think the past 2 years I've been working exclusively on broadcast dubs. We work pretty closely with the original creators because they're often still making it and giving us, here's what's going on, here's storyboards and grayscales, things like that. I also, as a writer, I try to be really up to date. The show, if I know a show follows the manga pretty closely, I will read everything I can to get my hands on. My partner is fluent in Japanese, so he will help me. Be like, oh, this is, we can find some stuff from Japan and actually watch it. So it depends on the show. Sometimes you never hear a word from the original creator until years later, and they go, good job, which is always nice. And sometimes they're very involved, and they say, oh, can you do this? And they'll read your script and give you feedback. And so it just sort of depends on the show. Every creator is different and has their own sort of relationship. Some of them are very, very private, even with their own crew, and some are very effusive and want to kind of be involved in every aspect of it. So it's kind of a mixed bag. You're like, ooh, I'm working on this show. Let's see what the relationship with the original is going to be like. I always look forward to finding out. So that sort of audition is very different than other sorts of auditioning processes, because I, for one, you just get called in and they say, hey, this is the name of the show, and just come in and look at the audition sides and you pick, several characters to read for. But I often go in knowing absolutely nothing about the show, because I try to keep myself blissfully ignorant, because I feel I do my best work when I don't have any preconceived notions or expectations. And I just go, well, let's just go in as a blank slate and see where my instincts take me. So that process is, you're called in, you are told the show sometimes they just, hey, come in, we want you to audition. And you're like, all right, we'll find out when we get there. Because it's very breakneck, it's very quick turnaround. So you go in and you pick up a booklet of audition signs and has a bunch of characters, and they say, pick 2 or 3, and then we'll call you in a few minutes and you'll read for each one. Usually the director will not give you any direction and just say, who are you reading for? And you'll say this, and then, all right, have a go at it, and they'll listen to your take. And sometimes then the director, having seen where your instincts took you on your own, will then kind of tweak it. Be like, try this. Can you maybe try him lower or higher, put a little more gravel. Can you make him sound a little more edgy? And then you have more fun with it and kind of flesh it out. And then you go on to the next character and so on and so forth. So the process of trying to bring it to life, if you've done any anime recording in your life, you quickly develop a relationship with the tropes that you see in just about every show. For example, if I know there's what's called a Megane character, the glasses-wearing character, I know I'm going to try out for that guy, because I've played enough of those that I'm like, oh, I have a good feeling for whatever the dynamic or the role this character probably plays in the dynamic of the cast. So I'll go in with a voice that I think matches that. And it's like any audition from that point forward, your instincts may be exactly what the director is like, perfect, that's exactly what I want. And sometimes they'll be like, no, that's not quite what I have in my head, so you're not the right role for it, which they never tell you, you just don't get the role. So you just, again, it's kind of what I said earlier about just kind of being a blank slate and just kind of going into it and being receptive to whatever comes your way. To me, that's acting. I find, if I overthink it, when I auditioned for Ouran, I overthought it. And I was very surprised that I got cast, because Kyoya was the character I was most drawn to when I watched the series. It was kind of early days for me as an actor, and I was working on the show as a time coder. So I had some relationship to it already, and I thought, wow, this is a really amazing show, and I love that character. And then when the auditions came a few weeks later, I'm like, okay, okay, Kyoya, what would he think? What would he, what would he do? How would he say it? And I was too much in my own head. And so when I came in, I was, Kyoya should be suave and in control, and I was none of those things, because I was too holding on to this idea of, what does it look like? And I learned that the best piece of advice I was ever given by any director who noticed I was very nervous when recording something, he said to me, and it was Chris Bevins, my first director and my good friend, he said, you're so nervous and you're wasting so much energy trying to not be nervous that you've got nothing left over for your performance. Just be nervous and just own it. Just let the character be nervous and see where that takes us. And I was like, oh, that was a wonderful, liberating direction, because I'm like, oh, I can just be nervous. Whew. I don't have to put any of my acting into trying to convince the director that I know what I'm doing. And so, whenever I audition, I just try to be like, whatever I'm feeling that day is how I'm walking into this. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I move on to the next audition. It's been, I wish, but yeah, no, that's theater for you. It's actually been a few years since I've done some theater, because anime is my life now. So with broadcast schedules, there's just not a lot of time. But man, I really want to get back into it. There's Dallas is my home, and it's such a good theater scene. There's a lot of really interesting, edgy stuff being done, and I love edgy theater. I love the kind of theater that makes people uncomfortable. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just a sadist. All of them. Any character that I think is, any character that challenges me, any character that teaches me something about myself that I didn't know was in there, which to me is the appeal of acting. It's, you know, getting to get inside someone else's head and kind of learn, like the villain in Scooby-Doo, it was me all along. You know, that's sort of the appeal of acting. So any character that kind of can take me on that journey is a very fulfilling experience. And it can be anybody. It can be a character that has 3 lines, but makes an impact in a very pivotal scene. It can be a character that carries an entire franchise, and it can be anything. I love acting for that reason. Acting is how I've discovered myself. It's a very weird process, but I love it. It's easy to understand because I get wrapped up in the fandom too. Like I never look at it as like, oh, they love me. It's like that they love Sebastian, and that's awesome. We share that. I love Sebastian too. Like, let's face it. Like Sebastian, those characters are. There's sometimes this kind of weird warped perception that it's the actors that make those characters and, you know, memorable, and it's not. It's the characters that make the actors who they are. You know, anyone could have played Sebastian and then just not screwed it up, and they would be as loved for taking on that role, because Sebastian is such a juicy character and it's such a wonderful series. So I was just very lucky to be offered the part and to, you know, have done it. I mean, must have done it decently. I didn't screw it up, so people are gonna applaud you for it because they love the character. I get it, because I'm a fanboy. I'm a fanboy for stuff. I've been a fanboy. I'm a fanatic. I mean, that's the word, you know. I get involved in stuff, and so when I see a cosplayer who's cosplaying a character that I've played, I love them. I'm like, oh my god! I feel like we share that because we're both fans of the work, you know, of the stuff that's there. So I totally get it. I love it. I totally get lost in it too, and I squee and jump around, and I out-squee some of the fangirls sometimes. Fantastic. I love it. It's my first time at this con, which I've been to Atlanta, I think, hundreds of times in my life, just because every flight in the world routes through Atlanta. So I know the airport like my hometown, but I love what a great con. It's such a good crowd, and everything is run so well, and like everyone's super nice. I love it. I may just stay. Audiobook. I would love to do audiobooks. I think I'm a big reader, so you know, I love to do that. I would love to go back and audio record the classics. I would love to go back and say do like the run of the Jane Austen novels. I love Jane Austen. Oh, we're gonna be friends, you and me. Anything like that, Dickens, like that kind of stuff. But I like man, there's some really great performances in audiobooks, and if I can plug. Just to treat yourselves, if you haven't heard Tim Curry doing Series of Unfortunate Events, which I think he did in the early aughts, what a fantastic performance that is. And I also forget the actor's name, but he did the audiobook version of Peter Suskind's Perfume, which is a wonderful book, a very dark book, but it's one of the best voice performances I think I've ever heard in my life. I love when you find brilliant performances in unlikely places, because I don't think most people think of audiobooks as a kind of performance, but it absolutely is. And again, like with acting, if it's a performance, I love doing it. I'm a performer. It's in my blood. So, thank you very much.